So January was a pretty good reading month for me. Like, I can hardly hold all these books. So we're just gonna kind of get into it. I kind of put them on my pile in order that I read them, with a few exceptions. I read multiple books in some series, so I put those books together, and I'm gonna lose my whole stack here. And this one was at the top because it's the smallest, so I'll talk about this one first, The Return of the King. I finished the Lord of the Rings series for the first time in my entire life this month. It took me 11 months to read the entire series. I started the Fellowship of the King, Fellowship of the Ring, there we go. I started the Fellowship of the Ring back in February. It took me about 6, 7, 8 months maybe to read that one, and then the other two took me no time at all. The Return of the King is very different than the movie because there's like a good portion where they're back in the Shire and kind of like cleaning things up, which is different. It doesn't have any of that stuff in the movie. I really enjoyed it. I tabbed up a bunch of pages and was surprised. At the beginning of the book, I thought maybe I wasn't gonna like this one as much as the second one, The Two Towers, or yeah, I don't know, but I did. So I think I give this one 5 stars. The first book I finished was one that I read for my Read Your Bookshelf challenge, where I picked a book that had a color in the title, and it was Red Riding Hood. Oh, I have so many things to say about this book. First of all, I didn't read anything about it when I bought the book from the thrift store. I seriously just looked at the cover, and apparently I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the cover either, because it says good girls don't talk to werewolves. Now, I'm not like a werewolf kind of person, so I kind of went into this, once I read that, having 0 expectations. But then I started reading the book and I was like, hey, this is kind of interesting. You find out that the werewolf is someone in their town, and I was like, okay, I can approach this like a mystery. Like, I'll try to figure out which person it is. And oh man, this is a spoiler, but I need to give a spoiler because if I don't, you'll read it, and no one should read this book because this book has no ending. Like literally 0 ending. It says at the end that you can go to this website to read the last chapter, which is a terrible idea. So I went to the website and it doesn't exist anymore. So you can like not find out who the person is. So don't read this book. It's going in the recycling bin as soon as this video is over, because I mean, it has no ending. The next book that I read, and then I quickly followed it up, was Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, and then later in the month I read And the Order of the Phoenix. So these are both pretty big books. I forgot to do this before the video, so at the end I'll write it down, but I was gonna tally how many pages I read this month because I read a lot of pages. Yeah, so 2 Harry Potter books. I'm almost on the series. I've just got the 2 left. I can't really go into it a whole lot because it is a series. Harry goes through a lot of stuff in these books. I'm surprised that I'm enjoying the series as much as I am, being an adult and reading it for the very first time. I know people kind of accuse Harry of being kind of angsty and a teenager, which, I mean, like, he is a teenager and he's gone through a lot of stuff. It's not really his fault that he's as dark and moody as he is and doesn't really want to talk to anyone. Yeah, so I read those 2 books. On the Harry Potter theme, I also read The Tales of Beedle the Bard. And this is kind of like J.K. Rowling's, I feel like this is her version of Grimm's fairy tales. These are supposed to be stories that witches and wizards grew up hearing, like their bedtime stories. And like, it's a cute idea. I actually didn't mind it at all. It's a little dark, just like Grimm's is. But there are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories in this entire book. Like, I feel like it's supposed to be part of Hogwarts library, a book that they would have there. And I feel like she could have done more. I feel like this was just a ploy to make more money, which, I mean, I understand. But she should have given us a little more. And another thing is, in the introduction, there is a spoiler for something that happens in book 7 of Harry Potter. So that's kind of annoying. There's no warning that it's going to happen, like that they're going to tell you. So my daughter has read this a few times over already, but I told her, don't read the introduction if you don't want to know what happens in the book. On a completely different note, I read The Golden Road, which is the second book after The Story Girl, written by L.M. Montgomery. I quite like her writing. I did read her kind of like biography book, House of Dreams, a year or two ago, and realized that L.M. Montgomery had a lot of depression and dark times, and you can't tell by her writing. Like, she writes such happy, carefree characters, and I really appreciate that about her. I enjoyed a lot about this book. One character, Dan, I didn't remember at all from the first book. Like, he wasn't memorable at all, and he is all my yellow tabs. He kept having all these funny little quips. One of my favorite little quotes here is by the story girl. She says, "It won't be nice to be frozen to death, but if we get through alive, think what a story we'll have to tell." Like, I appreciate her optimism. I want to read all of L.M. Montgomery's books eventually, and this was a really good start, the Story Girl series. Next up, I read an entire series this month, and that was the If I Run series. There you go. Book 1 is If I Run, book 2 is If I'm Found, and book 3 is If I Live. So this is a Christian fiction series, and it is about a girl who, like, right off the first chapter, you find out that she comes across a murder scene of her best friend, and she knows she's going to be accused and blamed for it, so she's on the run. And I appreciate, like, how creative she is. She, changes her appearance, the different things that she goes through to check into hotel rooms so people can't find her. And I always just kind of like thinking of, like, different loopholes like that. Not that I would ever even do anything illegal, but I don't know, my mind really appreciates the thought that goes into this book. The different hairstyles she has. She goes from, like, blonde to brown to black to red to, I don't know. It's probably not a good thing that I enjoy that kind of stuff so much, but I did find this series enjoyable and really quick to read. Each book, I read each book in less than 2 days, and, like, the first one I think I read in, like, 6 hours, while still, like, feeding my family supper and stuff in between. And yeah, so this series I would highly recommend. The next one that I read is Seagrass Pier. This one I shared about quite a bit in my first reading vlog. I have a lot of thoughts on this one. I enjoyed part of it. So it's about a woman who gets a heart transplant, and she starts having these dreams and memories of the murder that happened with the person that had the heart before her. Yeah, and so, like, the cell memory part of it and that mystery of finding out, like, who started who it was that murdered this woman is really interesting. But then there's, like, a whole romance side of things, which I just wish was not in the book at all. It's so idealistic in a way that's not realistic. And yeah, so for that reason, I'm going to be giving this book to one of my friends because I think she might enjoy it, but it just wasn't for me. Then there was a dystopian, partly fantasy book, Aquifer. This is about a boy who, he's called the Deliverer. Him and first his father and then him are the people who can go to the fresh water source, the only remaining fresh water source in the world, and access it and give water to the entire world. And then on top of that aspect of the book, there's also this part where people are not allowed to show emotion at all. Everyone has a little dial that flickers if they show any emotion, and if they are showing emotion, they kind of get, like, a warning, and if that doesn't help, then they're kind of, like, eliminated, I guess. So it was a very interesting book. I really liked a lot about it. I do wish the author would have taken a little bit more time to, like, flesh out his ideas a little bit, but overall I really liked the whole idea behind it. In between here, I'm just going to talk about a book I DNF'd because I did put this one, Orphan number 8. I put this one on my TBR in my bookish newsletter that I send out each month, and I had really big hopes for this one. It's about a woman who was, when she was a girl, she was experimented on in a Jewish hospital, I think, and then years later she's a nurse, and one of her patients is the doctor that experimented on her, and it's supposed to be about, like, whether she chooses forgiveness or revenge. That sounded really good, but man, this book was not written in a way that made it enjoyable at all. I didn't get even too far into it, and there's a lot of, like, themes coming up that I don't enjoy reading about, and I feel like the writing wasn't very well to begin with, so I just DNF'd it, and I'm just going to get rid of this one. A book that I finished that I enjoyed is A Slip of a Girl. This is a free verse novel. It's a middle grade book about a girl who lived during the land wars in Ireland, and it's a cute little book. It's got like, it's free verse, so there's not a whole lot of writing on each page, and then it does have pictures of actual land wars times, I guess, back in Ireland. And I think it said that it was in I think it was like the 1880s that they occurred. And yeah, it's a cute little book. If you like free verse novels, this might be one to pick up. For audiobooks this month, I was listening to Nevermore and Wondersmith. Nevermore, it starts out with a girl who is born on Eventide, which is the unluckiest day of the year, and she's set to die on the next Eventide, which is supposed to be her 12th birthday. And turns out she doesn't die, and it's kind of like the adventure she goes on after that. It is a cute series. It's very whimsical and yet dark. It reminds me of Alice in Wonderland crossed with Green Glass House, crossed with its own thing. So I listened to Nevermore. I listened to Wondersmith. My favorite part in Wondersmith is when the main character, Morgan, is looking for clubs to sign up, like on the board at school, and the one that she feels like she can join is called Introverts Utterly Anonymous, that guaranteed no meetings or get-togethers of any sort. I was like, that is a club for me. Yeah, so this is a cute little series, and book 3 is coming out in a week from now. So if my library gets it on audio, I'm gonna check that one out too. And then my last series that I started this month is Keeper of the Lost Cities. I read book 1, and as of right now, I'm not quite done with book 2, but I will be by the end of the month for sure. This is about a 12-year-old girl who's a telepath, and she realizes, like, right at the beginning of the book that she's not even human, though she had no idea, other than like the whole telepath part, that she was not human. And it's kind of like she gets rescued by these people who are like her, and then it's about her finding herself in that world, going to school. It reminds me a lot of Harry Potter. Like, there's a lot of themes in the first book that really remind me of Harry Potter, and I think the series as a whole kind of just has that vibe. So if you are a Harry Potter fan, this is a series I would recommend checking out. And yeah, I'm gonna see if I can pile all these books back up here. I don't even know how many books this was. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So 16 books I read and 1 I DNF'd for the month of January. Yeah, so it's you know, like just a few books. It's gonna fall. Okay, we'll just go like that. One thing I wanted to do each month was talk a little bit about why I thought my reading month was the way it was, like some positives, some negatives, and I wanted to see if I met my goals for the year. So January in Saskatchewan, where I live, is usually pretty cold. We had a week where it was like -30 or colder for the entire week. So during that week, when I wasn't, you know, doing my household things and caring for my kids and making food and that kind of stuff, I was pretty much sitting here with a fireplace and a blanket and reading. So I read a lot this month because of that. I also am not on social media so much anymore like I used to be. So that has been freeing up some of my time. And I think I've just been prioritizing reading more. It's thanks to book 2. I'm getting really excited about books that I'm hearing about and wanting to read them myself. So that's kind of why I read so much this month. Anything that hindered me from reading is just like regular life stuff that I won't change anyway. And as for reading goals, one of my goals was to read a tome each month, so a book that's 500 pages or more. And I read a few this month. So Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire is over 600 pages, so that one counts. Order of the Phoenix, I think, is exactly 800 pages, so that one counts. And then I'm still not quite done this one, but I will be. Keeper of the Lost Cities book 2 is 568 pages. So like I've definitely hit at least one a month. I'm curious about Wondersmith. Oh, 521 pages. No, I gotta check out Nevermore. This one doesn't feel like it's quite 500 pages. No, 461. And I think Keeper of the Lost Cities book 1 is just under 500 as well. Yeah, it's like 488. So there we go. I read 4 tomes this month, so kicking off the year pretty well here. I also wanted to read 12 middle grade novels this year. Not necessarily one per month. And I'm already like clearly doing okay with that. I've got Wondersmith, Keeper of the Lost Cities. I'm not even going to count Harry Potter because it kind of like is getting into the YA section there. So Wondersmith, Nevermore, Keeper of the Lost Cities 1 and 2, and A Slip of a Girl. So I read 5 middle grade books this month. And then I want to do a page count each month of how many pages I have read. So I'm going to insert that here. And I don't know what the number is, but I'm guessing it's going to be pretty high. And I don't think I will have another reading month like this one for the rest of the year. Like I don't think I can top this. So there you have it. If you have any suggestions of what I should read in February, I'm really excited about my TBR for the month, and I know I'm going to be reading more than that. So if you have some other suggestions on top of those, let me know.